something just magnificent and powerful can have those scars, those, you know, the broken branches and things like that, but we sort of appreciate that in trees, the beauty that comes with that. But, you know, when people carry similar sort of scars from challenges, we're more judgmental, we're less accepting of it. So it's one of those things with nature, that we interpret or we value trees in a different way than we value ourselves.
Mate, we've got contact to our right and contact to our left.
I did engage with the psychologist in Canberra. At the time I was doing some pretty sort of high stress work with Special Operations Command, and you know, it was all catching up with me, and I saw a psychologist and she said, "You know you've got PTSD, right?" And I said, "No, I don't." And then I walked out and I left and I didn't go back. I go back in time to when I joined the Army. I was sitting in a motel room in Cairns contemplating life, and I was watching on the news on TV. I was watching Australian soldiers land in Hercules aircraft in East Timor and marching off those aircraft with their packs and their weapons, going there to support the Timorese people who had just voted for independence from Indonesia. And in my mind, there was no more righteous mission than that in supporting an oppressed people in, you know, achieving the freedom that they that they desired and voted for. It was a very steep learning curve for me, you know, as a junior officer, full of energy, with, you know, strong values and things like that. But then being exposed to the reality of the military being an arm of politics, there was absolute moral tension in me between what is right and what we were told to do, because those two things often didn't align. Our tactical mission, our role was to support the Iraqi army. So we were, if the Iraqi army felt like that they were being overwhelmed within their fighting with the insurgents, then they would ask for our support to support them through that. But there was one occasion that I remember vividly that we were asked to intervene in a particular outbreak of violence in the city of Nasiriyah. We had the Iraqi police and the Iraqi military begging us, essentially saying the insurgents are overrunning us, they're killing us, they're destroying us, and you know, we need you to come in and intervene. And the message we were getting is no, 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 the risk is too great. We negotiated that we were able to resupply the Iraqis, so we were helicopter dropping in ammunition and medical supplies and other things, and we organised permission to evacuate some of the Iraqi security forces who were wounded back to our hospital for treatment. And I remember standing at the gate of our base at one time when we were helping facilitate the evacuation of those Iraqis, and this young Iraqi soldier came in and he was shot in the stomach, and you know, he was bleeding everywhere and stomach acids coming out. And I remember vividly having my hands on his stomach trying to stem the bleeding on his stomach, and I was thinking to myself, what the hell are we doing here? There was a whole bunch of denial going on in me because there was a very operational focus of the army between Iraq and Afghanistan. So to me, the message I kept telling myself, well, there's no time for that. There's no time for that because we've got a job to do here. So, you know, stop thinking about yourself, start thinking about the mission, basically. I came back from that particular deployment, which was my second deployment, and frankly, I felt fine. I felt fine. It was a very busy time for the military. We were taking casualties through IEDs, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So my job working over there in the Pentagon was doing strategic counter-IED work, from looking at new technologies to detect and defeat the devices through to attacking the network at a strategic level. I was probably about halfway through that posting over to the US, and I was attending a representational function at the Arlington National Cemetery, which is the National War Cemetery for America in DC. And I was walking to this event, and I walked through the Iraq section of the cemetery, which was a pretty new area and a growing section of that cemetery. And as I was walking to where I was going, I walked past this particular grave, and there was a girl sitting there. There was a girl about 13 years old that was sitting there just reading a book. It was a bright sunny day. It was an absolutely beautiful day. And she's sitting there reading this book. And to be honest, I paid no attention to her. I just thought, oh yeah, it's a lovely day to be sitting outside in the sun reading a book. And I was focused on the task at hand, and I just sort of went up and did the task I had to do. But later on that day, when I was leaving, I walked back again, the same path again, and that girl was sitting there still reading that book. And then it hit me, it hit me like a bloody freight train in that moment that she was sitting there reading that book at the grave of her father. And sorry. And in that moment, a lot of the sort of, you know, thoughts and memories sort of came back to me, and in that moment, I sort of couldn't help wondering how many other kids are out there. I couldn't help wondering how many other kids are out there, Iraqi American, but colleagues of ours, who are living without a parent as a consequence of what we did not do in Iraq. So we'll start there. My relationship with PTSD needed to be resolved within me. I'm not much of a talker. I don't, I have these conversations with myself, but I'm not one to sort of share with others too much. Nature played a huge role in, I guess, my recovery. When I was in Afghanistan, what I wanted more than anything when I was over there is to roll around on my front lawn and just lay down on the ground and just be, be present with nature. So I fell in love with the silence, the quietness, the mindfulness benefits of hand tool woodworking, and that was absolutely pivotal in my management of PTSD. So how I introduce, aspects of woodworking into my practice is actually working with veterans, and not only veterans, I should say, but other emergency service workers, and in particular police officers. And what I found is that my psychology practice was set up as is probably 95% of other psychology practices, where I run 50 to 60 minute sessions in a room with 4 walls around me, sitting face to face with somebody. I'll finish that 50 to 60 minute session with them, they'll move out, and then I've got a line of people in my waiting room belt feeding in to see me like that. Working with these veterans, some of whom reminded me of me, frankly, and the experience that I had. I was having veterans telling me or asking me, can we go and sit outside and have today's session under the tree or at a picnic table outside? I feel a bit suffocated in here. There was a couple of other people where we'd sit there and I'd engage their senses in a different way, where they might carve a spoon or make a set of chopsticks or a simple task like that as we're talking, and that tended to free up the communication. It removed those invisible barriers and allowed people to engage a bit more. It allowed them to slow their mind down, focus their attention on something, and have that connection with me. So it led to me starting Halcyon Woodcraft, which is a social enterprise arm of my psychology practice, where we run free hand tool woodworking programs for wellbeing for veterans and emergency service workers. The grain is obviously running north-south vertically like that, and that's what gives trees their strength like that. So we need to draw the strength from those trees into the spoon that we actually make. So the spoon is actually cut from that orientation from the tree branch or the log. The feedback I get from people is that it is incredibly valuable. You know, the best moments for me is when I'm in that small group environment, whether we're sitting outside in a park somewhere or sitting in my studio, and there'll be 10 minutes of absolute silence. Then I know that people are in that flow state. They're completely in touch and engaged with their senses. They're focused on what they're doing now. They're not thinking about where they've been or what they've been through, but they're focused on where they are now and what they're doing moving forward. Getting people to observe the fact that they're doing that can help them you know, recover and move on from that, yeah. I left the army a few years ago now, and one of the challenges with leaving the army is losing that sense of identity and purpose as well. So this work that I've been conducting through Halcyon Woodcraft, my psychology practice, and through my Churchill Fellowship, it's allowed me to continue that sense of duty and service to the broader Australian community as well. So that's helped me in that transition out of army into civilian life, because I think, you know, when you serve in the military or in other uniforms in other organisations, you absolutely have that sense of not only identity but purpose and a mission focus on supporting broader society. So it's helped me maintain that commitment, because just because I've taken off my military uniform doesn't mean that my commitment to the veteran community and to the broader Australian community has finished. I think that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. And because of the wind and the slope, it's developed that strength by growing twisted like that. Somebody that carries those sort of scars and wrinkles as a consequence of their life. You know, we're judgmental of people, but we see that on a tree and we go, wow, that's really beautiful, because it really tells a story.